Hello everyone. In this example I'm going to be looking at finding domain. And more specifically I'm looking at a more complex example where I have a radical and I have values in the denominator that I need to consider. In this case my function is 3x squared plus 1 divided by negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 8. When we look for domain, we consider, do we have any variables in the denominator, and are there any radicals? And in this case we have both. I have a variable in the denominator, the x, and I have a radical. So I'm going to set up two conditions. The first is anything inside this radical has to be at least 0. In other words, it can't be negative. So I'll first set up the inequality. X minus 8 is greater than or equal to 0. That's going to represent all the possible values that I can have inside there. When I solve that, I'll add 8 to each side. Now I have x is greater than or equal to 8. That's part of my domain. The second part is considering this denominator as a whole. Since I have more than just the radical in the denominator, I need to consider this as one giant expression. In other words, I need to consider when could the whole denominator, the entire expression, negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 8, ever equal 0. So now I'm going to solve for x again. I'll add 2. Now I have the square root of x minus 8 is equal to 2. I'll raise both sides to the second power to get rid of my radical. X minus 8 equals 4. Finally, I'll add 8 to both sides, and I'll get x equals 12. Now I'll say, what this means is I have to consider also that when x is 12, I'll have a 0 in the denominator. Of course, this is not something that we want. So we're going to exclude 12 from our domain. So our domain consists of two parts. X is greater than or equal to 8, and x cannot be a positive 12. Let me use a number line to better explain this. So I have 8 and I have 12, the two numbers that I'm considering. Our first domain tells us that x is everything greater than 8, as we can see here. The second domain tells us that we can't have a value at 12. So our overall domain is going to consider both parts. So we're going to say both that x is greater than or equal to 8, but cannot be 12. So I'll say my domain is such that x is going to be greater than or equal to 8, and x cannot equal 12. Or in interval notation, notice I said and, not or. I consider both at the same time. In interval notation, we'll say we have to look at both parts of this inequality, meaning, let me highlight it more. For interval notation, I'm going to express this interval here, and then this interval over here. So, my first interval includes 8, and of course everything bigger than 8 up to 12, where I'll have a parenthesis, because I'm not including 12. Combined with my union, everything from 12 to positive infinity. That represents this second interval. We're saying 12, not including it, that's why we have a parenthesis, up to positive infinity. That would be our domain for the original function, 3x squared plus 1 over negative 2 plus the square root of x minus 8.